What's the impact of performance-enhancing drugs on Major League Baseball? That topic and more on America's Pastime next on Carpe Diem. Hello, I'm Mark Rosenwig, Assistant Professor of Television and Digital Media at Montclair State University. The 30 Major League Baseball teams take in almost $1 billion a year in cable rights fees. For reporters, it's a challenge to cover all the issues surrounding the sport. 3 reporters who've covered Major League Baseball extensively joined me for a discussion at the Yogi Berra Museum and Learning Center on the Montclair State campus. We heard from Jeff Bradley, former Star-Ledger reporter and columnist, MLB.com reporter Paul Hagan, who has been elected to the Sports Writers Wing of the Baseball Hall of Fame, and Russ Salzberg, sports director of Channels 5 and 9. Hagan is the only living person being inducted into the Hall of Fame in 2013. No former players were elected due to the steroids controversy. I asked Hagan if these players belong in the Hall of Fame.
Well, my first thought is that I think we all know why there weren't any players voted in this year. And my second thought is I'm really glad the baseball writers don't test for Bud Light. No, I think it's a real difficult issue. And I've had endless conversations with people who vote for the Hall of Fame. And I've kind of come up with a couple things. One is I will never criticize anybody for what their vote is because everybody's going to have to look at this their own way and come to their own conclusions. But for me, it comes down to a pretty simple thing. I don't know who did steroids, and I don't know who didn't. I'm not going to base a vote on, well, I won't vote for this guy because I think he did, but I will vote for this guy because I don't think he did, because I think what we found out is that probably more did than didn't, and still are, I personally believe. So I think you either say, I don't vote for anybody because I don't believe in steroids and I'm not going to vote for anybody from this era, or you say, it's the steroids era, this is what people did, there have been different eras in baseball, this is one of them, and you vote the way you always did, voting for the best players of their generation.
What's your view, Jeff?
Well, I don't have a vote, even though I've been doing this a long time. I had 14 years at a magazine, so I lost my BBWAA privileges at that point. My view is pretty similar to Paul's. I think the scary territory that we've entered into right now is writers using the eye test. This guy looks like he did, this guy looks like he did. I think that's no way to go about judging the steroid era. I think that, and I wrote about this in 2000, and I basically said that the way the Players Association and the Commissioner's Office dealt with the steroid era was going to lead to this problem, because the way they handled it, everybody is under suspicion. There was no testing for the longest period of time. And when there's no testing, and things are happening in the game that you've never seen before, it's not fair to say, well, this guy looks good, and this guy looks really muscular, and this guy looks clean. It doesn't work that way. So I don't have a vote, and I'm actually glad I don't have a vote because I really don't know how I'd handle it. I would tend to think you have to look at it as the steroid era. Who were the best players or the dominant players from this era, and go from there. But again, glad I don't have a vote.
But the majority didn't think so this time.
Yeah.
And I think also, we focus on the hitters, but I think we all know there are a lot of pitchers on steroids too. So if a pitcher using steroids throws to a hitter on steroids, who's cheating?
You happen to be right, and I guess probably, especially with the Roger Clemens situation, whether he got off in court or not, Paul's point is well taken. I mean, before it was always the focus on the hitters, but I'll say something else to what Jeff said. It's not just the way baseball covered it, it's the way the players and the players' union policed themselves. Because basically they didn't police themselves, because they were against testing and it was covered up. There are a lot of, there's a big situation where guys are quite frankly PO'd because it's not fair to have guilt by association. Well, why is there the guilt by association? Because you guys in your union didn't allow the testing. I mean, if this was all out front and center a long time ago, it wouldn't be the guilt by association.
But I also think that you need to think that the Major League Baseball Commissioner's Office put their head in the sand as well.
Without question.
Right, because they could have fought it, but you know, the home run chase of 1998, which was 4 years after the strike, where there was no World Series, it got people excited about baseball again. And I think that
McGuire and Sosa, for those who don't
Mark
remember.
McGuire, Sammy Sosa,
Right.
going after Maris's record, the magical summer, the summer that saved baseball, whatever people wanted to call it. We now know that this was a steroid-fueled charge at the record book. But it was good business for baseball at the time. So rather than call it as you see it, and a lot of us saw it, we saw guys who were behemoth, who were hitting broken bat home runs, who were doing things like we'd never seen before. But there was no testing in place, and there was really nothing you could do short of a guy getting arrested for maybe purchasing anabolic steroids. Baseball had a banned substance list. It was faxed to me one time. I think it was 27 pages long. But there was no testing. So this is like saying, okay, we're going to trust that all New Jersey drivers will drive 55 miles per hour on the turnpike, but it's an invasion of your privacy if we put radar detectors out there. So just drive 55 and we're good. This was what baseball was for 20 years.
I also think there's a couple things here too, though. In fairness to the Commissioner's Office, they did try to get testing in. They tried to collectively bargain it. The union said no. Now you get to a point where you've had numerous work stoppages. You have to ask yourself, how hard are we going to push on this issue? Could they push harder? Sure. Should they have? I don't know. If it had led to a longer work stoppage or another work stoppage, that's a tough call to make. The other thing is, now we've had testing for several years. Major League Baseball just increased and expanded the testing, and we're still going through the biogenesis scandal. So this tells me that just like in the Olympics and just like in other sports, players are going to try to find a way to get an edge, to take an advantage, because there's so much money involved and because they're such competitive people at heart. And I don't know who said it, but I saw somebody said the other day, baseball is never going to solve this problem. They can only hope to contain it, and I think that's really true.
The biogenesis scandal you could have knocked me over. When I heard that, I said, this is never going to go away. And they're always going to try and cheat. And if that is the case, then I think the people who vote for the Hall of Fame have a real problem. Then I don't care if nobody ever gets in again. Because really, if it's true, okay, if the allegations are true, for example, about Alex Rodriguez, and I'm not saying they are.
And just so everybody knows, that's the story we're talking about. It was broken by a weekly newspaper in Miami a few weeks ago that got documents they say were from the clinic with his name and a few others.
And other people as well. But the point being, if it is true, you think about it. You had a guy, number one, previously come on TV and say he never used when he did. Then he came out in 2009 and admitted it, and then it went away. And he just so happened to help the Yankees win the World Series that year. And if you would cheat again, knowing what you just went through, then to me, if I never see you put on a uniform again, that's fine.
But here's the problem. There are cheaters in the Hall of Fame.
You're 100% right.
Gaylord Perry admits that he cheated. I remember sitting in a bar in Montreal one time with the Phillies pitching coach and one of the pitchers, and the pitching coach was showing him how to scuff a ball. So, I mean, I have a hard time with this. I just don't think we can put things in real simple categories. I think it's a really difficult issue.
I would take it a step farther. I would say that there are steroid users in the Hall of Fame.
I would not argue with that.
I mean, this era did not just begin. The thing about testing now is that baseball, in many regards, has always been the last to learn. Baseball was the last sport where we saw athletes lift weights. It was the last sport to get to performance-enhancing drugs. So the next frontier is how to take performance-enhancing drugs without tripping a test. This is what all the Olympic sports have gone through this cycle. It's done in other sports that are drug tested. now these guys the guys who want to cheat, they hire gurus, they hire scientists, they are ahead of the testers, okay? And it takes a slip up in their procedure, Melky Cabrera, to trip a test. They go against the advice of their guru, who has told them this is how much you can take and not test positive, and they mess it up. So it's not going away. The only people that I really feel for in this whole thing, and this goes back now 15 years, is I do feel for the clean players who had no voice in this matter. And I spoke to a number of them, I'm sure you did too, in 98, 99, 2000, who said, this is crazy. Just so you know, back then, the rhetoric around the use of steroids was much different. It's dangerous. It could kill you. You could drop dead. You know, this was the rhetoric. Then it started to change to, if you're smart about it, it could really help you put up some big numbers and make some serious money, and it won't kill you. So that changed the game. I think it used to be a dark alley, you know, Gold's Gym type of thing, you know, with the guys who were huge bodybuilders, and then it became, you know, when Barry Bonds and that crew got going, it was with people who were performing these with Olympic level athletes who were tested, and it was designer steroids, it was creams, it was much more simple than injectables. So the game changed, and it's going to continue to evolve, and it's not over.
See, Barry Bonds is an interesting issue to me, and you know, quite frankly, Roger Clemens as well. Like, to me, if you used, you shouldn't be in, okay? But I think Bonds, correct me if I'm wrong, Bonds won 3 MVPs before there were questions about him using.
Before he blew up.
Before he blew up to look like a nose tackle in the NFL. And Roger Clemens won 3 Cy Young Awards. To me, if you win 3 MVPs, you win 3 Cy Young Awards, those are credentials, for me, from Russ Salzberg's standpoint, to put you in the Hall of Fame. And, you know, I don't like either one of them for the cheating, which I believe went on afterwards. But to what both Jeff and Paul said, what you believe, you can't go on what you think. I mean, you have to form an opinion on what you think, but to say, I think he used, is not knowing that he used. It's a gray area.
Over the years, have sports writers done enough to cover this story? I mean, a lot of the stories that were broken, I remember the McGuire thing, it was from an AP reporter who saw a substance in his locker and reported on it, and I believe he was kind of a pariah after he did that. Have reporters focused enough on this? I mean, the story, the A-Rod story was broken not by sports reporters, by a weekly newspaper in Miami. Have sports reporters not paid enough attention to this over the years, other than when somebody else, non-sports, reports about it?
No, I think sports reporters, sports writers, beat people, I think the people who cover the sport on a everyday basis have done a good job. You know, sometimes, listen, the story, breaking this story with the Biogenesis Clinic is a big story. You know, somebody got a tip on information and got the goods. You know, God bless them, that they did a good job. But I think ever since this has become an issue and you're seeing top players, I mean, everybody's eyes and ears are open to it.
Now, there have been reports that Major League Baseball went down to this newspaper in Miami and asked them for a copy of the records, and as far as we know, at this date, they haven't received them. What should a journalist do in a situation like that, Paul? If somebody asks for your information?
No, I don't think you turn over your notes or your sources. I think Major League Baseball has a lot of resources, and if I could find that information, I'm sure they can find it too.
They've got more money and resources than Paul Hagen does, and he's right. You know, it's not my place to give you my information. You want to talk to me and ask me a question, that's fine. I'll be glad to talk to you, but I'm not giving you my notes.
And besides, they put a lot of this stuff out online. I mean, the information's available. Maybe the sourcing of it isn't available, but what they know, I think they've reported a lot of it.
getting back to the original, I think that's nice of you to say, but I think we came up short in the coverage of the steroids going back into the 90s, and I would point to a few things. There was there was an incident where Jose Canseco, for example, was with a guy going through a hotel, and they set off a metal detector, and the guy had anabolic steroids on him, and the guy was not an athlete, and he was with Canseco, and Canseco said, "Oh, man, I had no idea this guy had that stuff," And there was Manny Alexander, who his car was driven to Burger King, I think, around Fenway Park, and the clubhouse kid was driving the car, got pulled over. In the glove compartment there were steroids. There were signs. I can personally tell you that at ESPN, the magazine, in 1998, as we tried week in and week out to come up with new ways to cover McGwire and Sosa, I was kind of slamming my fist down on the table saying, the story here is steroids. And nobody really wanted to go after it. I don't know how we could have gone after it. Like I said, there was no testing, and it would have been, now we have the Daily News I-Team. We had the San Francisco Chronicle who put investigative reporters on the story and got things. We didn't put the resources into it back then. I think we kind of missed the boat.
Well, no, I'm agreeing with that. I'm just saying, you bring out a good point. At the beginning, they might have missed the boat, but as you bring out what happened in San Francisco and the Daily News, now they're covering it. So I think we'll all agree the coverage has improved.
Oh yeah.
Well, except for early on in this panel, we started talking about how newspapers don't have the resources and don't commit the resources they used to.
Yeah.
I mean, I can just say as a beat writer, I remember one spring Lenny Dykstra showed up, and he was all bulked up. Clearly, he'd been doing something, and we asked him, Lenny, what'd you do here? Oh, well, I exercised and took some special vitamins. Yeah. Well, Lenny, what are we talking about here? Steroids? Oh, no, not steroids. Well, I couldn't test him. The team couldn't test him. I'm not really sure as a beat writer what I was supposed to do after that, except for report what he said and let people draw their own inferences from it. Now, would I have liked to seen the paper or one of the papers, detach 3 people and let them go after it for 6 months? Yeah, but that wasn't going to happen.
Right.
I remember when Lenny showed up at Met spring training the first year, he really bulked up. I remember Darryl Strawberry looking at him like, "You're bigger than me, for crying out loud," and that's when I started to wonder.
Now, I remember when I worked at the Yes Network and we started doing the Yankeeographies, we had the Roger Clemens Yankeeography. I'm looking at the rough cut, and this was before any of this stuff with Clemens broke. And I'm sitting there looking at the pictures of him when he played for the Red Sox when he was a stick. I mean, he was still substantial versus Yankee footage, and it was hard to ignore. But there was no documentation, no testing. That must have been frustrating for a lot of you reporters to be aware that or feel that a lot of this was going on, yet there's no way to confirm it.
It's very frustrating. It was frustrating on several counts for me. One was that I had a brother who played 7 years in the big leagues and was his fatal flaw as a player was that he lacked power. And he played at a time when suddenly guys his size were hitting for power, or guys his size were getting a lot bigger in the offseason. And it's funny because he holds no grudges. He had his time, and I always look at him and I'm saying, man, you hit 330 in AAA, and all that's missing from your resume was a few more home runs. So I sort of got angry about it from that standpoint, as having somebody who I saw work so hard to play the game at a certain level, and not be quite good enough. And I think the playing field was not level for a guy like him. The whole issue for me, it was without any testing, and the union was adamant. It's an invasion of privacy. There will not. I have quotes from Gene Orza, who worked for the union, saying there will never be random drug testing in Major League
remember
Baseball.
him saying it.
Never. And then you say, well, what about the guy? What about the clean player? Doesn't his voice matter? And so,
doesn't it also, a lot of it circle back to the fact that at that time at least, there was really no public outcry. I mean, if people saw, people might have thought about some of this stuff, But it wasn't like, if the public said, we're not going to these games, these people are, fraudulent or
Right.
whatever, but that never happened. So what's the motivation to do something
It's
about
very
it?
interesting, right? Because now, supposedly the game has been cleaned up. There's no steroids, and we're seeing fewer home runs. And I'm covering the postseason last year with the Yankees, and nobody can hit for either team. And I'm saying, maybe they need to bring steroids back, or you see Citi Field bringing the fences in, or Safeco
Right.
Field bringing the fences in, because they built these ballparks for these monster home run hitters, and now all of a sudden, who wants to go see a bunch of fly balls end up on the warning track or in front of the warning track? So yeah, there was something to be said for the excitement of knowing that, you could go and see crazy things happen on the field. But
And now you're also seeing, because he's so much in the news with this latest biogenesis deal, you look at A-Rod, and his body obviously has been breaking down over the past couple of seasons. It's second hip operation, one operation on each hip. I mean, it makes you wonder. Like we know that he did because he said he did in the past, but it makes you wonder how much was done, and is this breakdown not about just getting on in age, but about the effects of using over the years?
Mm-hmm.
And I think another thing that's contributed to this is Major League Baseball's value system. They pay people for hitting home runs. I mean, that's the stat that seems to get you the big contracts. So I can understand why somebody like your brother might have been tempted to do that, because and I think the game has changed in that sense. I think 20, 30 years ago, it was more about being an all-round player, defense, moving runners, the little things that maybe a casual fan doesn't like, but the real baseball fan appreciates. Mm-hmm. But the fact that the casual fan likes the home run, I think, has led to a real overemphasis. ESPN shows the home runs every night, or they used to.
there's no better example. And Russ, you brought it up before, Barry Bonds. Barry Bonds, you guys may be too young to remember this, but Barry Bonds was a first ballot Hall of Famer as a complete baseball player. As a complete
Everything.
baseball player, a base stealer, a defensive player, an average hitter, a doubles hitter. He was the full package.
And he was a very friendly guy, too. on top of that.
What he was not a great home run hitter. But suddenly, he went from being this all-around player to being a home run freak. And it was, I without the numbers in front of me, he had never hit 50, I know that, and he went suddenly, I think, from 46 was his high to 73. And his whole game changed. He stopped stealing bases. He became a liability in left field. It was a weird change. And you almost say, in retrospect, if getting to the Hall of Fame was something that was important to him, he was gold. He was first ballot.
He was a five-tool player.
First ballot Hall of Fame player as a five-tool outfielder who did everything well.
Well, the word is, you guys could attest to this, that he woke up one day and here he was, a three-time MVP, and he wasn't hitting 50 home runs, but he was hitting in the high 30s and 40s. But he woke up one day and said, "Screw this! I'm not having these people."
McGuire and Sosa.
I'm better than them. So if they're doing it, I'm doing it, and that's exactly what
It's like
happened.
Jack Nicholson and Batman saying McGuire and Sosa were stealing all his press.
We always like to leave our students with our assessment of sports media and where it's going over the next 5 years or so, and how they should prepare themselves, because many of them are interested in being the next generation of sports reporters, producers, etc. What's your view? Russ, you want to kick it off for us?
I think it's getting tougher. It's getting tougher to break into the business. Even though there are more things out there, in terms of blogs and tweeting and, online and electronics, it depends what you want to do and how badly you want it. I mean, I was always one, listen, I got into the business, I was selling real estate up in Canada, and I was married, I already had a child, and I was into my 30s, and I woke up one day and I decided this is what I wanted to do, and you know, you make a decision to do it. I don't think it's just, I don't want to get off on a tangent because we're talking about sports media, but I think that's the approach anybody should take in anything that they want to do. I mean, I'm not talking about being a doctor, or you have to, you know, go to school, you know, specialize in that, but you know, it's going out. I find today a lot of people, and I don't know if, you know, I deal with interns and what, some kids really want it. You know, there's that old story, people say in the old days they wanted to take, it wasn't just about getting to the destination, they wanted to take the journey to get there. That was the fun of it. It's what you went through to get there. And I find some kids really today, I talk with a lot of them, really want to take that journey. But there are some who just want the destination, and I think that doesn't work.
One of our panelists a few years ago here said to students, be prepared to sacrifice your 20s, although in your case, I guess it was the 30s.
No, but
if you feel that passion and strongly about it.
Yeah, and listen, the beat guys, they didn't just start off covering, you know, a beat. You know, you do small things, but it's, while there are other options out there, you know, like I say, maybe more, you know, the money is not the same. You know, the world has changed.
I teach sports reporting at Monmouth University, and you know, the one thing I've tried to explain to people is, whether it's Russ Salzberg's very successful, Paul Hagen on his way to the Hall of Fame, the one truth that remains in our business is that you will start out getting somebody their coffee. Whether you think you're better than that or not, everybody in this business starts out at the bottom.
Pay your dues.
You have
be
to.
willing to pay.
You have
And there's
to.
nothing wrong with that.
Right, and my one bit of advice would be to be well-rounded in today's media world. Learn how to do everything digital. Learn how to design your website. Learn how to blog, tweet, do video, edit video, everything. Because nowadays, I have a 14-year-old and a 16-year-old, and they can do most of that stuff. So I would advise everybody, that's the way to go.
Special thanks to Dave Kaplan, the director of the Yogi Berra Museum and Learning Center, for his contributions to the panel. If you'd like information on this or any edition of Carpe Diem, write us at carpediem@mail.montclair.edu or call us at 973-655-5158. I'm Mark Rosenwig. For all of us at Montclair State University, thanks for watching Carpe Diem.